Welcome to WFPC Podcasting, your local source for the heart and history of Pike County, Indiana. And now, here's your host, Randy Harris.
Pike County Prosecutor Darrin McDonald and his Chief Deputy Sarah Stevens received a little help last year in a deputy prosecutor, a new one, Logan Tedrow. Logan has taken the bull by the horns and is making an attempt in being proactive to prevent crime before it happens. We're going to discuss a lot today. Logan, welcome. Logan, prosecutor's office. You're not from here. How did you get here? Where'd you start out?
Well, I'm not from far away. I'm from Daviess County, specifically in the southeast corner of Daviess County, sort of in the corner of Martin, Daviess, and DuBois County, a small town called Alfredsville. It's a town of 112. I like to joke that I dropped the population by about 1% when I left, around about 10 years ago already. It's hard to believe. So I left when I went to undergrad down at USI. I studied history and political science. It's where I met my wife, Jessica. After undergraduate, moved on to Bloomington, the IU Maurer School of Law. Spent 3 years in law school, 4 years in Bloomington in total. Started out at a small firm called Boren, Oliver, and Coffey. It's a firm of 8 attorneys, counting me, 7 partners and 1 associate. Let you guess what that was like. But I learned so much. And I think what I really got from that perspective was some insight into the value of an attorney doing good work. I know that sounds a little bit cliche. We'd all like to think that every profession can do good work, and I'm inclined to believe that they can. But I got to understand what that looks like with this skill set, this set of training, this way of looking at the world, this means of understanding situations and issues, and how you can come beside an individual who's going through a difficult time, provide them with some resources, some resolutions, some solutions, some ideas, and try to make that situation better than it was when you found it. Even if it can't turn out the way they would like, even if it can't ultimately turn out the way that you would like, I saw the value of being able to make it better. So I left Boren, Oliver, and Coffey when my wife matched into residency. She's an MD psychiatrist in Vincennes, still in her residence, her 4-year residency term. Went down to Evansville to a firm called Zemer, Stamen, Weitzel, and Shoulders. Again, still in private practice. Most of what I did there was on the civil side, not on the criminal side. So very different from what I'm doing now. But a lot of work that we did was municipal. I was working for municipal entities like the city of Evansville down in that area. And I really saw that as, even though it was private practice, it was nonetheless service to the greater community. And again, I saw the value of an attorney attempting to make it better. I had the honor of working with, instead of just 7 other attorneys, a few dozen attorneys at Zemer. The cases we were working on were remarkably complex, very difficult, lots of facts, lots of people involved. And I watched how some of these more experienced attorneys were able to take these complicated facts and spin them together into something that made sense. And from whatever level of complication we were facing initially, again, be able to produce something better. After a few years at Zemer, I began to think that, as grateful as I was for my time there, that maybe there was something else out there in that public service direction. Right? I felt a call strongly to that kind of work. Began to think perhaps I could find something that allowed me to do public service full time. Around that time, I was made aware that Darrin McDonald, our elected prosecutor, Sarah Stevens, our chief deputy, had sought the creation of a new deputy prosecutor position. Importantly, I learned that what they were looking for was someone to address issues of drug reform, drug cases. Someone to take a look at the way things have always been, shake it up, come up with a new solution, and make it better. So I was drawn to that immediately. Interviewed with Darrin, we hit it off, our personalities meshed. Got to meet everybody in the office, same deal. And I've been here now since last March.
Wow. That's quite a story. And it all just, it's everywhere. So I've got so many questions to come out of that commentary, but Pike County is a little different place, community, than you have in Evansville, than you have in Bloomington. It's getting back to Cornettsville. I mean, it's or Alfordsville. It's a small place.
It is.
And we have problems similar to the bigger places. But how do you wrangle that? How do you get a control on it? What is the problem? Identify the problem.
Well, I think the issue, really, at least when it comes to drug reform, is latching on to the way that it's always been. The common refrain that people like to share on social media, right, is what is the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, right? The issue is being willing to try something different. And now I'm not saying being willing to just try something off the wall, just try something off the cuff necessarily, but being willing to look at the options, weigh things we haven't tried before, assess which ones are most likely to be successful, particularly here in Pike County, because you're right. We have problems that are not necessarily unique to Pike County, but many of them as applied in Pike County are unique, right? Our people are distinct. The communities we have are distinct. The history we have is distinct here in Pike County, and so what works in one place may not necessarily work here. What works here may not necessarily work somewhere else. The issue is being attached to the same problem and the same solutions we've tried before. And the solution is doing something different, but being systematic and being smart about how we do it.
We think we have problems here. Boy, it's hard to get me out of the county sometimes, but every now and then you do things to please your family. And they can never get me to take a vacation in the summer because I'm working. But we did take about 3 days before Christmas, and we go to New York. You walk outside of the hotel room, and there's a group of 8, 10, 12 guys just smoking marijuana. It just fills the air as you walk through downtown. And you walk, and wow, they're just lost souls. How do we prevent us from? And you know, one thing I've quoted this before on this program. Bill Scales, he and I worked together for several years, and he would tell me whatever happens on the coast, eventually 10, 20 years is going to hit Indianapolis and then us.
And I'm inclined to agree with that, yes.
So how do we prevent that? And that's what gets into your homelessness, and it's a mental issue more than it is physical.
Indeed.
Or anything like that. So what are you defining that we need to get started with? And how do we do that so we don't become that in 15 years?
Well, I think the beautiful thing is that we're already seeing a positive change.
I've heard that. I've heard that from a couple of people in your line of work.
The common refrain is a tidal shift. I think we've seen a bunch of individuals from a bunch of different backgrounds and a bunch of different professions who have awoken to the notion that, again, we have to do something different. And they've awoken to the notion that it has to start with a compassionate mindset. It has to start with a people-first mindset. Addiction is a community issue, and therefore the best way to combat it is with a community-based solution or a set of community-based solutions. Ultimately, it's a disease. It's a disease of the mind and body, which causes an individual to continue to return to abuse of a substance, despite the negative impacts that it might have on them socially, financially, legally, as we often see them in our office. They don't necessarily want to, right? But there is a compulsion which brings them back to the substance. And in a way, even though it is a community issue, it's also an individual issue, isn't it? Right? Every individual is different. The circumstances that brought them into their addiction differ. We can identify trends.
Those demons are out there.
Precisely. They are. But the best way to combat it is to meet individuals struggling with addiction where they are. And we're seeing positive results with what we've been doing. So to kind of get into it, I need to give credit to Rise Peer Recovery. They're a nonprofit organization based out of Washington, but they operate in Pike County and have been for nearly a year now. And when I'm talking about people first and community first solutions, it's their peer recovery model which facilitates it.
So right, let's back up a little bit.
Sure.
Right after you moved here, came into town, Darrin McDonald and I, who have been friends since he was 16 years old, he called and said, "I want you to meet the new deputy prosecutor." You and Darrin came into the office, and shortly thereafter, one of you called and said, "I want to talk to you about a program." So I come up to your office. I'm your liaison for the county council.
That's right.
So when you have an issue to discuss with the council, or funding needs, or something beyond what's already in the budget, you come to me, and I kind of tell. I'm kind of your intermediary with the council. This is what they're trying to do.
Oh, and you're always very helpful and very responsive in that regard.
Thanks. So you brought me into a meeting, and John Craig was there, our president, and you had Rise Peer Recovery Group, and that is a whole team of people. Some of them are former addicts themselves who kind of know what we're getting into, and they reach out to the community, find those problems, and say, let us help you get through this.
That's absolutely right. Yes.
And I have heard from, like I say, people within your little circle saying it's working.
And we think it is.
Tell us more about it. How's it working?
So I think this would be a good time quickly just to talk numbers. So I hope I don't put anyone to sleep with this. But really how this project began was as Darrin was taking a look back over the last 20 years that he's been serving this county as prosecutor. Drug reform was on his short list of things that have not progressed as far as he would like them to.
It's everywhere.
It is, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's more lax everywhere than it was 20 years ago.
And I'm inclined to agree. Absolutely. He met with Chris Yon, who is the chief probation officer here in Pike County, and they looked at historical data on probation and recidivism rates. They found that at least going back a decade, the annual average recidivism rate was approximately 33%. It's about what it averaged out to. And they agreed that that was unacceptable. So in seeking out these programs, they brought me in, we assessed the available alternatives, and we'll get into, again in a moment, why I think the peer recovery model is such an effective model. But to highlight the effectiveness as it is, let's take a look at our caseload, okay? So how our office's caseload is set up, we have infractions, we have misdemeanors, and we have felonies. Infractions, many people don't realize, are not actually crimes. They're civil penalties that the state assesses against you for an action. And
give us an example.
Speeding ticket. That's the best example. Speeding ticket. It's something that has a public safety interest. We need to enforce it, but ultimately it's not a crime. It's a civil penalty used to enforce good behavior, get you to slow down just a little bit, right? And then moving up from infractions, we have misdemeanors, which are the lowest level crimes, C, B, and A.
Give me an example.
Some theft crimes can be misdemeanors. In our case with drugs, possession of a drug is usually a misdemeanor. Often a misdemeanor depending on the drug. Methamphetamine does bump up to a felony. Some things like marijuana possession, that's a B misdemeanor. And then we move up to felonies, level 6 being the lowest and level 1 thereon. So now that we've established that framework, let's set aside the infractions for just a moment, the non-criminal civil cases that we manage. Looking at 2024 data, approximately 60% of our criminal cases had at least one substance-related charge. Now the charge itself is related to substance. So that's possession, that's dealing, it's paraphernalia, it's intoxication, things like that. That doesn't necessarily mean that only 60% of our cases were influenced by substance abuse. That's just the number of cases that resulted in a substance-related charge. That's a minimum. 60% of our cases are affected by substance abuse in 2024. Now, we don't have Q4 data for 2025 yet. We're still 3 weeks into the new year, and we'll be pulling that hopefully soon. But through Q3, so through the end of September of 2025, 75% of our criminal cases had at least one substance-related charge. 75%, right? So with that bulk of our caseload being established as related to substance abuse and our recidivism rate historically hanging around 33%, what we're seeing now is a recidivism rate which has plateaued for the last few months at approximately 10%.
Wow.
I think that's a pretty significant decrease in what we're seeing. And I've been stressing for people that we are sort of in a trial year. We're beginning to figure out I'm calling it the Pike County method, right? We're figuring out the Pike County method for how our office approaches substance abuse cases. We're trying new things and we're seeing how they work. We're collecting data and responding accordingly. But 10%. It's hard to shake a stick at, I think. There is something to this peer recovery model which is effective. And I genuinely believe it is that individuality, it is the community mindedness, and it's the simple ability for the peer to relate to the person across from them.
It's one-on-one.
Exactly. To be able to say that I see you. Maybe I've not been in your exact shoes, but I've been somewhere like where you've been before. Here's how I walked my way out. Let me come beside you, throw my arm around you, and walk with you on your way out. Let's figure out what you need individually. What's going to work for you with your background, your influences, your beliefs. Let's match it up to who you are and pave the road for you to walk your way out. And we've seen individuals so far with 20-year issues with methamphetamine addiction. Methamphetamine addiction for 2 decades, who are now showing significant signs of positive recovery.
And you've just been doing this for 10 months.
Thereabout.
Wow. And you've got to give some credit to, you got to give all the credit to Christ, but that's helped gels this all together, correct?
I mean, as an individual, I can really only attribute this progress to divine intervention. And I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful every day that I get to be a part of this,
You hear people talk about this. We spoke earlier about being in New York and marijuana, and you can go to the corner store and now buy marijuana in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be a gateway, isn't it?
There's a lot of debate, best as I can tell, still to this day. Some professionals seem to think no. Many think yes, and I think there are colorable arguments on both sides. From our perspective as law enforcement officials in the prosecutor's office, we do tend to see a pattern. For many, it begins with marijuana usage in youth, and it progresses from there. Now, there are a lot of additional factors, right? We can talk about their home life, we can talk about how they're doing in school, and whether it's the marijuana or any of these other factors, but yes, we're inclined to think that generally speaking, individuals do begin with what we might think of as lighter drugs, illicit substances like marijuana, and then progress to more significant, what we might think of as harder drugs from there.
Mm-hmm. So, when you get to them, what stage are they in when they start having all of these issues in the court system?
Well, I would say it's fairly often fairly advanced. We often have individuals who have, been dealing with their illicit substance addiction for some time, and they've had to have been for it to lead to detection, interdiction, and intervention by law enforcement. Now, occasionally we do encounter an individual who has only recently come into their addiction, and in a strange way, we're grateful for that. We feel like we found them early before it could take them too far down the road. But typically, by the time addiction leads to the significant legal interventions that our office sees, it's progressed, and it's progressed significantly.
Within your circle right here in Pike County, you've got several different groups that seem to be. You mentioned Christian.
Yes.
You've also got an outstanding sheriff's department.
Absolutely.
Police force.
Indeed.
CEDA.
Correct.
You've got EMS and EMA that all share a common goal with you.
Know it.
So how does that all and explain CEDA to us? You've got to work.
Well, actually, CEDA is excuse me. CEDA is a great lead-in to this community involvement that we've been seeing. I've been referring to CEDA as the hub organization. Right? CEDA is the Commission to End Drug Abuse in Pike County, CEDA, CEDA.
And they've been around 20 years, I guess.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And actually, they're created by the Indiana Code. There are certain statutory provisions for how each county's commission has to be set up, how it's funded, and how it operates. But the beautiful thing about it, and again, I'm going to call it the hub organization, is that it brings individuals together from different backgrounds. Law enforcement officials, the sheriff's department, city police forces, prosecutor's office, like myself or my colleagues in our office, brings together physicians who treat people with addiction. Dr. Aaron Wiseman comes to mind as one who attends regularly. In fact, my wife, Jessica, has been involved. She is based out of Vincennes, but she does treat individuals from and in Pike County. We see as well people from Purdue Extension, the people from the library, people from all over Pike County. We have some individuals who aren't even publicly employed. They're simply concerned citizens who care about the issue, who attend to provide their perspective and volunteer their time and the effort. And leading into that as well, even beyond CEDA, you've mentioned EMS, Sheriff's Department operations, law enforcement in general. The issue is simply too big for any one solution from any one person or group to adequately address it. Again, I'm stressing addiction is a community issue. Individuals who are struggling with addiction contact the community in different ways and at different points. When you bring together individuals who contact these individuals who are struggling with addiction at different points in their addiction and in their recovery journey, you can compare notes. You can identify trends, come up with new solutions based on what we've seen before that perhaps just one individual working in a silo, if you will, wouldn't have had the perspective before to work with. I have to give all the credit in the world to our dedicated law enforcement officials, police officers and sheriff's deputies, for their skills in drug interdiction, as well as the compassion with which they carry it out. We're finding that, again, I've noted 75% of cases having a substance-related charge as opposed to 60% in 2024. It is very possible that our interdiction skills in law enforcement are becoming better. We're,
somebody else who touched on this, and you might touched on this during this program right here. It was our coroner, Nick Henson.
Yes.
He said it's down.
Indeed.
He said, I see it.
You're referring to overdose?
Yeah.
Yes, overdose is absolutely down. And we're taking all of this as a positive sign that these escalated interventions and then the new processes that are happening thereafter are effective. We are interceding on individuals at various points in their addiction, beginning to present them with solutions, opportunities that they've never had before, and giving them a path away from that perhaps inevitable tragic end.
Logan, this is pretty deep. This is quite a study. We're going to come back to this study, but we need to pay a bill right now.
Fair enough.
And if you don't mind, I'm going to start talking about a house for sale by Harris Real Estate.
Take it away, Randy.
This is a beautiful 409 North 11th Street in Petersburg. It's 2-bed. It's beautifully remodeled home with spacious open living room, kitchen, nice sized bedrooms, and a large laundry and bath. This house was gutted with new studs added, new walls, new wiring, new roof, new windows, new water heater, etc. It's a nice little home. It sits on 3 parcels near the end of North 11th Street at a very affordable price of $110,000. You can call Harris Real Estate at 354-2006. You can call my cell number 812-380-1065. One thing interesting, this was the first house that I bought when I reached out from the apartment life back in 1991.
Well, so you've got personal experience with this property then.
That's right.
How about that?
We'll be right back. But first, let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors.
This is Kyle Hathaway with Hathaway Excavating and Rock Yard. We have the equipment and crew to take care of your earth moving needs, septic installs, and digging out what you need dug out. We also deliver rock, and we maintain and pump septics. We're just a couple miles away. Call Hathaway Excavating at 812-582-2646.
And when you wash your car or vehicle on a regular basis, there are many advantages. You're easier to see, you preserve the life of your vehicle, help maintain its value, protect its paint, prevent corrosion, and it just looks better. It only takes 6 quarters or your credit card to get it started. Stop by Petersburg Car Wash today. Petersburg Car Wash, home of the springtime yellow Mustang. 401 South 9th Street, Petersburg. It's growing. You're seeing people improve. How do you keep them clean and sober and getting back on the right feet?
It begins, I think, first with a solid plan, followed by continual engagement. A good plan and good follow-up, if you want to put it that way. Whenever we have an individual working through the program with our office, first it starts with an assessment. Rise Peer Recovery, either Chad Smith or Samantha Davis, or 2 dedicated Pike County peers from Rise, will meet with the individual over a course of times, usually a couple of weeks, but tends to be however long they think they need. They'll assess where the individual's at, assess the state of their addiction, assess where it might have come from, assess what sort of treatment might be appropriate for them, and what sort of system's going to work, right? They then meet with me and or a defense attorney if the defense attorney is involved, and we collaborate. We speak about their findings, we speak about their legal interests, we speak about what we'd like to see out of the case, generally if we think there's a likelihood of success, and we come up with a solution. That solution is a plan. And typically, typical example, it may be that we're sending an individual to a 9-month treatment program, residential. And that term will become a requirement. We'll have that individual sign a plea agreement, typically how this ends. A certain prison sentence, which we think is appropriate, will be assessed. We request that the judge will suspend that sentence, which means it is still on the books, it is still applicable. However, for now, they're not being required to serve it. Instead, what they're being required to do is probation. And if there is a violation of that probation, then that prison term, which is hanging over their head, can be assessed. One of those terms of probation will be that they enter into and complete this treatment program, as well as follow any of the recommendations that the professionals there may provide. And we also require that they continue to meet with, keep regular contact with their assigned peer recovery coach, because the system doesn't really work if you're not communicating, right? So they have to check in with Chad or with Samantha with regularity anytime they want to call and say, hey, how you doing? They sometimes just have a conversation, see how treatment's going, and make a plan for maybe how things are going to look when they're done. And it's a requirement that they continue to follow with their peer coach. And in the event that they decide to fall off the path and stop doing that, that is grounds for a revocation of their probation, and then we can talk about assessing their full prison term that they have suspended. Really, I think the word is accountability, is what it comes down to. It comes down to assuring, yes, we have a good plan and we've assessed and we think this is the best chance of success. That's awesome. That's great. And we're not going to move unless we have that. But we ensure that there's accountability. The individual, their whereabouts are known, their progress is known, their status is known, and obviously we are cheering them on to be successful. We want nothing but success. But we're also willing, nonetheless, to return to the traditional means of prosecution of drug cases if we have to, if things are unsuccessful. If there's an issue, if there's a stumbling block, we go back to the drawing board. We take accountability for what caused the stumble, what may have caused a moment of weakness, if you will, an individual not being sure if they'd like to continue on with this path. We get an assessment. Are you willing to continue to follow the requirements? Are you genuinely still ready to get better? We are asking these questions constantly. There is a constant flow of information coming from our RISE peers speaking with these individuals. Our finger's always on the pulse. We are holding these individuals accountable as we're giving them these new solutions that maybe they've never had access to before.
Some of your people, have they hit bottom yet?
I think so, honestly.
And is that, when they hit bottom, does that ensure that they're ready to get serious about this?
I don't know if it ensures. Addiction is complicated. It is difficult, right? It's often...
What a temptation.
Correct. Yeah, what a temptation. I think that's a great way to put it. For some, even having, hit the proverbial rock bottom, perhaps the draw back into it is strong, right? For many it is. For some, even hitting rock bottom once is not enough. There are stumbles, call them relapses if you wish. There are moments of doubt that may not even result in a relapse. But I do tend to find success does seem to be predicated on that moment of understanding, right? That often comes with this proverbial notion of rock bottom. This internalized thought, this insight, right? That we have an issue here. This issue is self-destructive. This issue is leading nowhere good. And if we don't get serious about fixing it, if we don't acknowledge that we have to fully engage with the process to recover, it simply will not happen, and it may lead to a situation that's worse. Oftentimes, what is required for an individual to have that moment of insight is a moment of rock bottom and acknowledgement and understanding that their addiction has now led them into serious financial trouble. It's led them into issues with their family. In our case, it's led them into issues with the legal system, right? Now they're facing a level 6 felony possession charge. For many, that's a serious wake-up call.
If people see this coming, family members, the individual, if they see this coming, and it's not been involved with an infraction or an arrest, but they're watching this program, can they get a hold of you and say, I need to, how can you help me before I have to come see you?
Absolutely. Well, call me if you need to get the number. If you've got a question, call me and I'll pass it along. You can contact RISE directly. Their services are not...
So they don't have to be a referral.
That's correct. You can self-refer. And I'm so glad you brought this up, Randy. You do not have to hit that moment of legal trouble. You do not have to get a criminal charge to get access to services from RISE. They are here to support Pike County. Right? They are dedicated, fully committed to providing good quality service for the people of Pike County who are ready to be free from addiction. If you've not gotten to that point, right, that it's led you into legal trouble, don't wait. Don't get yourself into legal trouble.
It's coming.
It probably is. Make a phone call. Right? They have a website. You can Google RISE Peer Recovery, Google RISE Peer Recovery Davies County or Washington, Indiana, right? It's where they're based out of. It'll absolutely come up. They have a referral form. If you'd prefer not to make a phone call, you can submit a form. It's simply a Google Doc. Give some basic information about yourself, and they'll be reaching out.
And it's just RISE.
That's correct. RISE stands for Recovering Individuals Serving Everyone. It's an acronym.
And the goal is that we conquer this issue.
Yes, it is. And I am incredibly proud of this community, right? I think Across many walks of life, many backgrounds, we've seen so many individuals coming forward, not just placing trust in this operation, right? Not just saying, let's give it a try, but legitimately becoming invested, saying, let's dive in, let's change the way we're thinking about this, and maybe, just maybe, something will get better. I mean, it may not be possible to ever be completely free from the disease of addiction. It may not be possible, but by George, better is possible. And we're seeing better. And as long as the community continues to buy in, the community continues to say, we want better, the people of Pike County deserve better, we will continue to get there. We will continue to see progress being made. We will see lives turned around like we already have. It's extremely hopeful. Hope is alive and well in Pike County right now. And that's a beautiful thing.
Logan, thank you. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're making this effort. Do you have anything else to share with us before we close this out for this week?
No, I'd just like to say becoming a part of the community has been a massive honor for me, and I don't take it lightly. Right, every day I get up ready to put in my due diligence for this county, and the welcome that I've received, right, the support that I've received, you don't see that everywhere, and I simply want to express my gratitude to the community for that.
You know, there's something about Pike County, and that being the people that welcome you, and I
Yes.
always, and this might sound very cliche at this point, but I always say, you know, Pike County accepts you as soon as you accept them, and they're just great people. I had no idea that God's providence would lead me here since 1988. I thought I was going to make a transition in a career and move on, but it grows on you. It's home.
It does.
So we're glad you're part of it.
Well, thank you, Randy, and thank you for having me in today. It's always good to talk with you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for joining us for this program of WFPC Podcasting. The program is brought to you by Harris Real Estate, Hathaway Excavating and Rock Yard, and Petersburg Car Wash. Please like the podcast and share with your friends so more people can hear about WFPC. You may find WFPC Podcasting on our website, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen to your favorite media. Join us next Friday for another WFPC podcast exploring the people, information, and news right here in Pike County. See you next week.
Thanks for watching WFPC Podcasting, your local source for the heart and history of Pike County, Indiana. From back roads to town centers, we bring you the voices, stories, and news that shape our community. Join us on this journey through the past, present, and future of Pike County, Indiana. Tune in next week for the next episode of WFPC Podcasting.